Welcome to the Sunday Truth Talk. My name is Jona Bryndis. You're living True Self Radio, talking about subjects that concern the energetically sensitive person. So if you are one of those that other people or yourself describe yourself as a spiritually awoken or awakened soul, then you're on the right channel. Here Sunday mornings we talk about collective subjects, and this is your opportunity to ask questions. Yes, I see you guys. Welcome, everybody. Today I want to talk to you about the meaning and the purpose of your energetic sensitivity, your abilities that come with it, even though many of you experience this maybe as a burden. Who of you experiences your energetic sensitivity or have been experiencing your energetic sensitivity as a burden in the past? The physical sensations, the problems with just existing sort of as a soul self, as an awakened person here, a true self in this harsh 3D-ness, in this truth that is hitting us hard here, especially at the beginning of the year. It's like truth is doubling down on us. And those of us who have this energetic sensitivity, we feel this very strong. Who of you feels similar dread about truth is hitting the fan? Yes. In the past, when I didn't understand what you were experiencing. That is so important. Thank you, Amanda, for sharing this. When we don't know what we're experiencing, we feel like either there's something wrong with us or how we are perceiving things doesn't make any sense, has no context whatsoever. And this is why I have been doing these energy updates or these energy sessions, public sessions, YouTube videos, explainer videos, all kinds of different productions here for you guys over the past 10 years to give things more context. Yes. And this is the part here that I'm trying to fill in for you also through being with you guys in this exchange. I want you to participate in these truth talks. Of course, I've prepared a little bit of a talk here about subjects that I pick every week that are blending in the tasking that we are experiencing at a certain time. So today I'm talking about higher perceptivity, higher consciousness, energetic perceptivity, and what this actually means, why this is happening, and what opportunities can open up through this. Yes, Annette, exactly. Since you've been working on this, since you've been working on consciously becoming a true self and consciously working with truth is no longer a burden. And Kirsten, yes, you can feel the vulnerability around energetically sensitives more strongly than ever before. And that is because we are not innocent anymore, guys. There is something that comes with asleepness, and we've talked about this the last couple of weeks here. The state in which we refuse to really face the truth of what is going on within and around ourselves. And when we are in this conflict where we don't really want to be facing these inner realities, okay, it's only a matter of time till outer realities, till the manifestations of this kind of hit us and backlash on us. And so the vulnerability that you're experiencing comes from this inner conflict. There is something that we're feeling, but we cannot really allow ourselves to really face it, because if we did, we would have to make choices. We would have to make decisions in regards to our personal lives. And this is kind of like what this whole transformation right now is about. It's forcing us to do this. Those of you who define or describe themselves as energetically sensitives, as empaths, guys, if you have been, forced into this truth training over these past 10, 20 years. And the one thing, regardless of, the effectiveness of what these choices or what this training has provided for you, that you have, as opposed to the majority of people that are just now waking up, this rude awakening, is that you have a lot of training. You have a lot of sort of benchmarks, reference points, reference feelings within yourself when you're not in truth. You might not have the solutions yet, and I want to talk about this today, but you can already tell when something isn't right. And this is now the time here for all of us to recognize the power in this. So we have to learn how to turn this vulnerability into a strength, into a power. And today I wanted to talk to you about these aspects of truth training and what this is all about. Okay, so you will see here, not you guys on Instagram, unfortunately Instagram doesn't allow me to stream this, but you will see a new pyramid of learning. So some of you have maybe seen this already if you work with me, where I show the difference between how we have been perceiving and absorbing and processing information in the past, mainly, primarily through our 3D-ness, through our five senses, through our body, through our emotions and our mind, our brain that interprets what we're experiencing. And this shift that is happening when we begin to see that there is another reality existent simultaneously, namely one that actually includes our intuition, that includes our etheric brain, as we call this, this perception that we can tap into when we actually let go of all these external influences and just focus on the internal processing. So this is a huge shift when this happens in a person. So literally, this is a roadmap here for you guys as to how to deal with your energetic perceptivity. So I'm going to change the chart for you here a little bit so we can focus on the new way of learning, not the old way of learning. You guys all know this. This has to do with neurotransmitters, has to do with your neurology, with memory and all this. I want to focus on this new way of learning, the one that taps us into our higher consciousness and into these healing and self-healing abilities. The one thing that can actually make sense of all this empathy and energetic sensitivity, where we no longer need to feel at the effects of outer things, but where we can learn to actually control this from within, to self-master, and to be in a place of having an augmented reality where we have a lot more choices than we thought we had, or that other people see that they have, that just relying on their brain or their five senses. So this isn't just sort of wishful thinking here or woo-woo sort of pseudo science. This is actually happening everywhere in this sort of cognitive sciences, as they call it, cognitive psychology. The research on this, energetic perceptivity, what this actually even brings for a person, because until we understand the larger picture of this, all we can feel is the effects of that on our body, on our emotions, and on our mind, how this all sort of splits us, how this creates a lot of conflict in us. Until we see the larger picture, none of this makes sense. And so here I'm proposing a different way of looking at it. If you realize that this is kind of like the red pilling in the Matrix movies, it's like once you awaken to your own perceptivity, okay, there's a certain roadmap that follows, certain stages of that allow you to master this. This is just like when you start learning to talk. Okay, so it's one thing, to sense that you have the ability to actually, form words, but it's another thing to make sense out of these words and to give them meaning and to give them context. And this is now basically what we need to learn. We all need to learn the language of our soul, the language of our true self, that is the part here that mediates this between our ego or ego reality, the five senses, the 3D-ness that we are experiencing, and our soul. All right. And not to make the sound too spiritual, because the reason why people call this spiritual is only, or at least this is how it's been in the past, because it's not in the realm of the five senses. It affects the five senses, but it is not in measurable, in this sort of on this neurological level. So that's how this went in the past. Everything that was outside of five senses was just simply called spiritual. But if you actually take a deeper look and start qualifying all of this, you recognize that there are many different hierarchies of this. And what psychology calls mindfulness is really only the beginning of this navigation through our own higher consciousness and the higher perceptivity that comes through this. So what we have been experiencing as a burden in the past is really just the beginning of a whole new way of seeing the world, seeing ourselves, and seeing ourselves in this world. And what you can see here is that there comes a certain tasking with this, all right? So I call this truth training. Oh, and by the way, thank you for sending the hearts. Thank you for giving back. Sometimes it's so difficult to break through these layers of untruth. And I'll be honest with you, this vulnerability, Kirsten, that you mentioned, I feel this all the time, going out here as a living true self radio and trying to break through these layers of 3D-ness, without sounding, like I'm promising some kind of salvation through woo-woo stuff. This is stuff that is being researched. There's unbelievable evidence showing that, not just mindfulness, but including the spiritual component into your life actually increases your life quality, increases your ability to make good choices for yourself, and also taps you into higher levels of creativity, higher levels of connection with other people, higher levels of purpose and meaning, and with this fulfillment. So what can or what is generally described as fulfillment here, I want to sort of put this up a notch and call this soulfulness, because soulfulness is really something that comes from deep within ourselves. This is not just feeling that I have that I feel competent, or that I feel adequate, or that I can handle reality. No, it goes beyond it. Soulfulness is when we realize that we are indeed a higher being, a higher etheric being, a higher dimensional being, if you will, a soul in a 3D body, in a 3D realm. And once we begin to understand the implications of that, we can also better understand why this is such a painful process sometimes. Because we are actually coming from a place with a memory inside of us that is not aware to our brain, but that is aware to our etheric brain, the part in us that we can feel in our heart center, the part that sort of comes in when we allow stillness, when we allow our feelings, our emotions, our sensations, our thoughts to be there without feeling the restriction of it, when we can sort of compassionately witness all of the 3D that is going on in our life, but where we're not necessarily dominated by it, all right? When we get to this place, that is when we realize that there is a whole different level of choice, a whole different level of solutions that we cannot access, that we cannot see when we are just focused on our mental, emotional, and physical reality. So let's go through this here, guys. This is what the Sunday Truth Talk is. It's also educational for you to understand the larger perspective here. Okay, so once you waken up, once you awake. Sorry, guys, my dog is leaning against the table. Okay, he's leaving now and itching himself. So scratching himself, so he's like trembling the table. All right, so he's gone now. So what happens when we enter this new perceptivity? All right, when we go into this place where we realize that there is another reality right within ourselves. The first thing that happens is that we become more aware of our own sort of the totality of our senses, so these feelings, sensations, emotions that I've talked about, and even the thoughts. We begin to be able to witness our own thoughts. And this in and of itself, guys, it's philosophical, but if you actually realize the simplicity in that, means that there has got to be a higher authority inside of you. If you can observe your own thoughts, your own thinkingness, all right, then there's got to be something like a consciousness or something. I mean, the wording here, the lingo is controversial, but let's just call this a higher power or a higher consciousness in you, okay, that can even, that is possible, that is able to look down onto this. So once you begin to wake up to this, the witnesser in you, as it's often called, or the part in you that brings upon this present moment awareness, all right. This is this is a term from Buddhism, is very commonly used for what I'm trying to describe here. What will happen is that you begin to feel something inside of you that we often perceive as an inner sanctum or an inner stillness or an inner center. So you will hear people talk about a heart center, the heart field, in a more sort of neutral way that allows us to perceive reality now with less resistance, with less filters, with where our ego is still there, and we can observe our ego, we can observe our preferences and even our resistances, but we are still in this place where we can allow all this to be there. And it's also linked to our empathy, because at this moment we also realize that we have been asleep before, and we need to tune into this compassionate stillness within ourselves, where we can actually say, okay, hey, there's something there, and this looks like it's always been there, but I didn't even know this existed. And so here comes the first sort of burden, all right, to forgive ourselves for not seeing this or not knowing this before, to literally come to terms with our own asleepness. So when we catch ourselves being caught in our ego reality and we act upon it, then within this sort of 3D-ness, within the cognitive experience of our life, this might appear as making sense and the best way to do things. But when we start waking up to our heart, when we start waking up to our etheric brain, we recognize how most of these choices, or these decisions that we make on a day-to-day basis, how they're maybe just there to help to elevate ourselves, to make ourselves feel better temporarily, or how they're driven by our trauma, or how they all gear towards presenting something, even presenting myself to the outside world that isn't even true. So we wake up to a truth here, and the ability to tune into our heart and to practice this state, this present moment awareness state, then allows us to actually emotionally and mentally process that, to realize that, all the things that I've been presenting here in the past were primarily false self projections. That wasn't even the true me. And this is then when mindfulness takes on a really practical meaning, because through things such as deep breathing, tapping, meditation, and all these techniques that are sort of being introduced here into mainstream nowadays, that help us to ground ourselves, that help us to center ourselves, that help us to clear things out of our 3D system. Okay, so the body, the emotions, and the mind. Okay, we then begin to learn that there's a whole new level of regulation of our 3D-ness. Okay, so this awakening to our heart and to our etheric brain then brings in a whole new options of dealing with things. We no longer need to make decisions based on our pain, based on our fear. We no longer feel sort of victim of our own anxiety or our own depression. We know how to regulate this, and this is why mindfulness is something that is going to be more and more accepted as a part of this awakening stage. But I want to point out here, and you'll see this in this pyramid, it's an upside down pyramid for a reason, because the expansiveness that develops out of this, and these mindfulness practices, has only just begun. All right, so then we begin to awaken to a whole another level of self-awareness, and that is where we begin to realize that there's an energetic reality with all of this that we need to learn to navigate. We need to develop a lingo. We need to learn how all this is being processed inside of us. And this can be learned. This isn't woo-woo. Chakras, or the chakra awareness, for instance, has been around for thousands of years. This is not a new thing, okay? And energy awareness altogether, recognizing how energies interact, how we interact with other people, how other people's energies affect us, how collective energies affect us, and what we can do to counteract this, or how we can deal with this. All this then begins to open up for ourselves, and this is the next stage here of learning how to operate, learning how to straddle these two worlds without getting overwhelmed by fear, or by this just the fact that all this is unknown, or that most people in the world don't understand this yet. For those of us who are awakened, this is now the new reality, okay? To actually go within and feel into your energy body, to feel into your chakras. Not that it answers all your questions, but it gives you a roadmap. When you feel really clogged in your digestive system, or when you feel your throat sort of closing up on you when somebody asks you a question, through increased energy awareness, you can actually explain this to yourself, and also learn what needs to be done in order to change this, in order to shift your energy, in order to release maybe, or connect, or integrate specific aspects that are tied to these chakras, to these energy regulators within yourself. The big breakthrough for many of you empaths and energetically sensitives actually happens in regards to your relationships. Because once you wake up to the energetic reality of things, you're also beginning to understand your relationships better, and you begin to see other people with a whole different eyes. There is a complete new perspective on, what toxicity, what narcissism, what improper boundaries, what infringement, what projection means. There's many explainer videos that I've done about these topics. And this will be a big subject here in January, to really reflect on, how all these things in our life that we've accepted as norm, how they have affected our lives, because we are now forced to live the consequences, the manifestations of that. So what happens next then, is still within this realm of soulfulness now, the straddling two worlds, learning to understand that there is something like a higher self in you, all right, is that we begin to realize that there's also tools and cool abilities that come with this, and it allows us to navigate these etheric realms. It allows us to recognize where energies are coming from, especially in interaction with other people, and where my energies are going, what I am energizing through this particular thought or this particular action or this particular emotion. It allows me to make better choices. It allows me to shift my energy to specifically into, upping my vibes. All right. I know how my energy can vibrate on a higher sort of vibe. All right. And all I really need to do is, put this into action. So it allows me to shift my energy in a moment when I feel pulled down, when I feel pulled into my pain or into my fear, into my ego for that matter, and to actively master, my own energetic states. It's also where we realize that everything that we perceive, at least what we perceive through our 3Dness, is merely a state, is nothing that we need to identify with, because this higher self, the soul self in us, can observe all this. So that's when we also learn how to protect our energy. And as we are, making all these etheric experiences through visioning maybe, or plant medicines, or hypnosis, vision quests. There's a lot of different techniques here on this level that we can use here at transCODES. We don't use any substances. We don't promote altered states of consciousness. We actually help people to tap into this remotely, and this is very effective, where we can learn to navigate in these etheric realms. This then initiates a whole different level of I am awareness, a whole different level of self-mastery. We begin to understand that everything is just a matter of energy, and that everything can be transformed, that everything can be shifted. We also learn that everything can be healed, even our past, and that we no longer are the victim of, whatever outer energies are affecting us, unless we choose to. So it's a new level of choice that we receive through this higher learning, but also a new level of self-responsibility. And this is where a lot of energetically sensitives get into a new conflict, and that is, we realize the materialism of 3Dness, and this is, part of our lives, paying bills, having a job, and so forth. But at the same time, we also feel this pull into our soul self, and we have to learn to find the right balance. So here we become very aware of this balancing act between, what being abundant truly means, and if we have any kind of rigid beliefs about this, we can get into a problem with money here. Okay, so money aspects, abundance aspects, wealth aspects, they all belong into the same category, namely of energetic abundance. Okay, so whether I'm healthy, whether my life is happy, whether I have loving relationships, jobs that fulfill me, and relationships that are conducive and that are mutual and that are loving, all has to do with my energetic self-mastery ability, right? And this resolution that comes in through this insight then shows us a whole different level of choices, and that is then what I call gracefulness. It shows us that this inclusion of our spirituality isn't necessarily, or doesn't necessarily have anything to do with religion, but that it is something that has to do with us believing that there actually is a higher power in within ourselves. And this then allows us to really tune into divine consciousness, divine Wi-Fi, as I like calling it, where we can tap into the mechanics of all this. This is where we can learn energy work techniques. This is where we can learn how to consciously shift and alter our energy into more abundant, more loving, more fulfilling, healthier ways of living. And also where we can tap into a whole new vision for ourselves. This is kind of like the purpose of this truth talk here, to give you a new vision for what it actually is that is developing inside of you through your own energetic sensitivity. You're already being pulled into this, all right? So you're now just basically going through the motions of this. But because there's so little navigation help, it's sometimes difficult to see where we need to go. We're tapping in the dark. And with this education here, I'm trying to give you a roadmap, really, where this needs to go and what you need to focus on next. Because what happens when you learn these methodologies, all right, that can help you to navigate your own energetic sensitivity, and that show you the benefits of this, all right, what then happens is a whole new sort of outlook on your own beingness, your own existence, and that of all the people on this planet, and also the planet itself. The ability to fully tap into higher consciousness is then basically the embodiment of your own soul self, or as close as it can be in 3D, the highest expression of your own potential, of your own soul self translated into 3D. And this is then where the presence of a person like this, who has trained this and who is able to operate on this level, becomes healing. It becomes healing for people in direct contact with this person, or like yourselves, watching this, listening to what I have to say, to what I feel, sort of driven to push out here as a true self message to you, all right, who have not yet walked those aspects, those pathways of your own development. Right? So the goal is not to be some kind of, monk-like, Zen-like person sitting on the mountaintop. Okay, I mean, for some people it is a goal, and that's all right if that's your choice. But for most of us, this isn't feasible. For most of us, we hopefully we also want to enjoy life. We want to, really feel everything. We want to feel sensuality. We want to feel belonging and connection with others. We want to bring ourselves into an expression that is very practical and pragmatic. This has always been one of the things that I've told the people that come to me for energy healer training. I told them, if you want to be enlightened and sit on a mountaintop somewhere, then this is not the right training for you. Because for me, it's important to infuse people with the love for their own life, and also for the choice to incarnate here as a soul self into this 3D realm, and to find the purpose of that, not to find ways to escape that, not to find ways to run away from it or check out, but to learn how to live your life in this highest expression, through learning about higher and lower vibes, and learning how to shift this, and learning, how to become someone like a good friend, a good daughter, a good son, a good partner, a good parent, a good community leader, and how to really embody this and not how to step out, and just look at the world as sort of a pile of ants, that no longer, touch me. I want to be touched by people's lives. I want to be touched by nature. I want to consciously enjoy and live in, this sort of co-creative existence with other people, with the world, and even, yes, with the collective itself, that whether we agree or not is irrelevant. The most important part here is to understand that we have a choice whether we allow this to dominate our lives, our views, our beliefs, our energy or not. And this is the part here that is really, really changing for people now, that they're awakening to the fact that they actually have a choice. And the way this comes to us is through our energetic sensitivity and through what I often lovingly call true self interventions in our lives, these synchronicities or these unexplained impulses that you receive from within. And now the practical challenge is to get yourselves into the condition to even sustain this centeredness, this present moment awareness, the awakeness, as I called it last time, in the midst of a collective that is, 80-90% of which is still asleep, okay, meaning that there's no mainstream backup for us, okay. We have to create our own values. We have to become aware of our own needs and our own higher vibratory goals, and put them into reality through our own inner awareness and our own inner vision. Okay, so this shift really is the shift from like just doing things that come in from the outside, be it values, be it things that we are told, false self identities and beliefs and so forth, collective gaslighting, as I called this last week, to transmute all this to an inner prompting, all right, and go from this external domination to an internal choosing. This is the task at hand here right now, guys, for all of us. Our whole entire collective is awakening to this truth. And this is why, many of us empaths and energetically sensitives actually starting to feel stronger now than before. It's never been easier to be spiritual, to talk energies than it is right now. And this is happening for a reason, because this is part of our collective evolution here, our consciousness evolution as humans. And, this is this global awakening, really helping humans to evolve. Are we going to have a bunch of birthing pains with this and transition times? Absolutely. So the next 10, 15 years are not going to be easy, because, there's a lot of collective developments right now that steer us away from our inner soul self, this transhumanism, artificial intelligence, roboticizing everything, going into the sort of a machine world, as we've seen this in many of these apocalyptic science fiction movies. Okay, so things are getting colder and more materialistic. This is the last outcropping of this, guys. There'll be a lot of issues with this, okay, like we are experiencing issues with smartphones right now, the addictive nature of this, and how this is actually preventing us from connecting with another, even though we thought it would be, a benefit of connecting, but it actually turns out it's not. Our fertility rates go down. Younger people, they shy away from actual physical experiences now, because it's so much safer to do this behind a screen. And this will all have to be healed here within those next 10, 15 years. All right, back to, the humanness and, ideally to the higher expressions of our humanness, and that would be, the soul self really coming into expression, coming into higher expression here in 3D. So this is basically the backdrop here of this current collective development, and what it can do for us energetically sensitives or awakening souls here to feel this empathy, to feel this energetic sensitivity. It's not a burden, it's not a curse, guys. It's you being prompted by your own true self, all right, to work with this, to become real, and to learn all the cool aspects of that, okay, the higher abilities that unfold for you, and also the higher vibratory solutions for some of your life's problems or conflicts. Well, what are some of your guys' comments in regards to this, or questions, or how do you see this? Does this sort of change the way you look at some things, what I've just presented here? Does this give you a different outlook on things, or does this tie things together for you? It feels empowering. Yay! Well, this is my outspoken purpose here. Wonderful. Thank you for this feedback, Amanda. Yes, it makes you feel more compassionate. Mm-hmm. Yeah, compassionate towards others, right? And also our own asleepness. Well, it is life-changing. Yes, it is life-changing because, it's always just the context we give to what happens in our lives. It's not the content itself. The same event or the same thing can happen to, two different people, and they contextualize it in a different way. It has a different meaning for them. And the coolest part, and this is something that actually drives me, as a true self, energetically sensitive empath myself, is to see how the same event can affect me differently depending on a different state that I'm in. Me personally, not even different person, like just today I'm feeling like crap, and and I'm grumpy and angry or frustrated, and of course one thing that happens today is something that is just like another confirmation for all the crappiness. And tomorrow morning I wake up. Gosh, I had this yesterday. I had 9 hours of sleep and I felt like $1,000,000. And I woke up and I was like, oh my God, this feels so much more expansive. And nothing really had changed. The situation from the night before was the same. But I felt differently because I took care of some of my needs and, listened to my own body, telling me what it needs to shift the energy into a better state. And this can be life-changing. This can make the difference between, life-changing choices that we make, big mistakes, or visionary choices, that may feel a bit against the grain at first, because the ego often doesn't like things that no longer produce sort of the payoff of, feel good stuff or gratification. But then you also, experience the frustration of not, constantly getting these dopamine hits from your ego. And then life can look pretty dark. So you got to recognize here that if you just go by your ego's gratification, seeking pleasure and avoiding pain, that this is a sign that you are asleep. Okay, so every time you're trying to numb yourself or check out or, just sort of get through things, means you're asleep. Okay, this means you're not in access of all these higher abilities that I just described. Even, whether you're aware of them or not, but you couldn't even access them. You can't even see them. Life is pretty dark then. Mm-hmm. Yeah, guys. So to make this a bit more interactive, many of you know that I've been doing this for years. Once a month, I do this Connect with Your True Self remote energy training and healing session, and I've doubled down on this now. Okay, so this is a free session. Obviously, here at transCODES, it's like an energy training gym. Okay, we have ongoing public sessions and of course different programs, so personal energy training and soul self-awareness, all this. You can look this all up on the website. But with the free True Self sessions, I have now successfully concluded an experiment, and that was to add a True Self talk right after the energy session. And we did this on January 1st, and this was a very, very cool experience where we directly reflected on the energies, on the sensations, on all the things that were going on during the session. And this was really, really cool. So those of you who don't just want this to be a sort of a weekly talk, but also want to walk the talk, guys, you'll have this opportunity here with me every month. It's a different day that I pick, okay, to not only go into an energy session with me, where I also protocol and read your energies, but also to talk directly about it right afterwards, to give it a name, to learn what these aspects mean that came forward for you in this session, and how you can translate this. Okay, so this is a huge step into, really learning how to embody all of this for you. Because it's one thing to just come to one of those remote energy sessions. They're free. It's passive, right? You don't really have to do anything. But then if you never actually follow through on this, the guidance that you get from your true self, then nothing is going to change for you. Have you actually made any changes? No, and so this is the part here, guys, that needs to change now. All right, this is what 2020 is all about. You got to walk the talk, you got to walk the walk. All right, so yeah, come to these free true self sessions and learn how to walk the talk. All right, and of course, ideally, like I've mentioned last week, find ways to implement this into your daily life. Celebrate the sacredness of your soul self in this 3D being. Yes, it's a restriction to be a soul in a 3D body. But there's a reason for this, okay? You didn't just get plopped here, okay? Your soul chose this. And so fulfillment comes through tapping into your soul purpose, into, learning how to live a soulful life. Not on a mountaintop, not in a monastery, no. While enjoying and loving all aspects of this 3D life. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Thank you for supporting transCODES. You know that on my Patreon channel, I publish in-depth energy tips for every week. If you would like to get those, you have to, sort of sign up for that. There's a donation-based contribution for that. You can also work directly together with me. I have programs, from self-healing programs to VIP, personal trainer, personal energy coaching and energy healing services, the whole big range. So you know where to find me, you know where to find your inner truth. Now go and do it. I love you, and I'm wishing you a wonderful awakening to your energetic sensitivity and your truth. Bye-bye.